Smoke pours over stone walls, and inside, a 16-year-old boy stands calm while thousands scream his name like he's already a saint. They call him a messiah, sent by God, unkillable by any shogun's blade. You're watching the last stand of 37,000 Christian rebels, trapped in a fortress about to be erased. And the boy leading them will be dead within weeks, his head sent across the country as a warning. So how does a teenager end up commanding an army against an empire? It starts years earlier, with famine, brutal taxes, and a faith the government swore to wipe out. Christianity had taken root in Japan a century before, and the shogunate saw it as poison. By the 1630s, practicing it meant torture, exile, or death. Peasants in the Shimabara region were starving under crushing taxes, and their lord answered every complaint with cruelty. Then a rumor spread that a boy had been chosen by heaven to save them. His name was Amakusa Shiro, and people said fish had once leapt into his hands. They said birds landed on his shoulders, that his prayers healed the sick. Whether any of it was true barely mattered, because desperate people needed a miracle. And in 1637, that desperation finally boiled over. A local official was killed, and the uprising had officially begun. Within days, whole villages joined, peasants, ronin, fishermen, all armed with whatever they had. They needed a leader people would actually die for, and they chose the boy everyone already believed was holy. 16 years old, and suddenly he's the face of a holy war. His plan was, to put it generously, optimistic. Hold one fortress and wait for God, or the Portuguese, to save them. Neither would come, but nobody in that room knew that yet. They chose Hara Castle, an abandoned ruin on a cliff above the sea. 37,000 people packed inside its broken walls, families, elders, children. That's the number you need to remember, 37,000 souls behind one collapsing wall. They fortified it fast, repairing gates, stacking stone, sharpening whatever they had. And word reached Edo that a teenage prophet had an army, and the shogunate did not find that funny. They sent an army, not a small one. Over 120,000 troops marched toward that one cliffside castle. That's more than 3 soldiers for every single person trapped inside those walls. The siege began in the freezing winter of 1637. Cannons on the sea, cannons on the land, and inside, a boy telling starving people that God was still watching. But here's the twist nobody expects. This doomed little garrison held the shogun's finest army back for months. Every assault the shogunate tried, the rebels threw back, again and again. One commander, desperate to win before his replacement arrived, launched a reckless assault and was killed. His replacement brought something worse than more soldiers. He brought Dutch ships and asked Japan's own Protestant trading partners to bombard the Catholic rebels from the sea. Think about that, foreign gunships shelling a castle full of Japanese peasants over which version of Christianity they believed. Inside the walls, food was already running out. Rebels started sneaking out at night just to steal grain from the enemy camp. Some of those raids worked, most didn't, and every failed raid meant fewer hands left to hold the walls. Amakusa Shiro kept preaching through it, telling them heaven was still on their side. But whispers had started, quiet ones, wondering if the boy prophet was just a boy after all. Meanwhile outside, the shogunate had grown a small army into a siege machine of over 120,000 men. They dug trenches. They built walls of their own to trap the rebels in completely. No supplies in, no escape out. Just a slow, tightening noose. By February of 1638, the rebels inside were eating grass, leather, whatever they could find. Scouts reported the defenders looked more like ghosts than soldiers. And that's when the shogunate's new commander decided it was time for the final assault. Every gun, every soldier, every ship, all aimed at one crumbling castle wall. Inside, a 16-year-old boy prepared to face an army bigger than most nations could raise. Behind him, 37,000 people who had nowhere left to run. On the 28th of February, the shogunate gave the order. Over 100,000 soldiers surged toward the walls at once. The rebels fought back with everything they had left, which by now wasn't much. The outer defenses broke within hours. Then it became house to house, room to room, courtyard to courtyard. Families who couldn't fight hid wherever they could. Amakusa Shiro retreated deeper into the fortress, still surrounded by those who believed in him. Shogunate soldiers were closing in from every direction now. By nightfall, there was nowhere left inside Hara Castle for the boy prophet to run. They found him kneeling, praying, not running. A soldier's mother, of all people, is said to have struck the final blow. The Messiah who couldn't be killed was killed, and with him fell any last hope inside those walls. What happened next wasn't a battle anymore. It was an extermination. The shogunate's orders were simple: leave no one alive who'd held that castle. Not the fighters, not the elders, not the children. Historians estimate nearly all 37,000 people inside Hara Castle were killed. 37,000. The same number that walked in hoping for a miracle. The shogunate wanted the whole country to know what defiance cost. So they took Amakusa Shiro's head and sent it on a tour. It was displayed in Nagasaki, a warning nailed up for anyone still tempted by his god. Word spread faster than the shogunate probably expected, and in villages hundreds of miles away, people quietly buried their crosses. But here's the part that actually changes Japanese history for 200 years. The shogunate didn't just crush the rebellion, it closed the entire country. Nearly all foreign trade was cut off, nearly all foreign missionaries expelled. Only one tiny Dutch outpost was allowed to stay, on a man-made island, watched constantly. Christianity itself was banned outright, and stayed banned for over 2 centuries. One teenage boy's doomed stand had just sealed Japan shut from the rest of the world. The shogunate wasn't done making examples either. They invented a test called fumi-e to catch anyone still hiding their faith. Every year, whole villages were forced to step on it, just to prove they weren't Christian. Refuse, and you were marked. And being marked in that era ended badly. Some families kept their faith anyway, in total secret, for generations. They're called the hidden Christians, and some of their communities survived undiscovered until the 1860s. 250 years of secrecy passed down whisper to whisper. When missionaries finally returned, they found the faith had never actually died. It had just gone quiet, waiting, the same way Hara Castle once waited for help that never came. And that ruin on the cliff is still there today. But archaeologists digging there made a discovery that still unsettles historians. Mass graves packed with bones, far more than anyone expected to find. Bullet fragments too, embedded in skulls, proof of just how total that final assault was. Some remains show signs the victims weren't even soldiers, just children and elders. The dig confirmed what the records always claimed: almost nobody inside survived. 37,000 people went into that castle believing in a miracle. 37,000 people, and almost none walked back out. A 16-year-old boy became a symbol so dangerous, an entire nation sealed its doors because of him. 250 years of closed borders traced back to one teenager on one wall. Today, some Japanese Christians still consider him a martyr. Others just see a boy who never had a real chance to grow up. Either way, the number stays the same: 37,000. 37,000 people who trusted a teenager to save them. 37,000 people who very nearly vanished from history completely. If you'd asked the shogunate, this story was supposed to end in silence. Instead, people are still telling it, 400 years later. And that, honestly, is its own kind of quiet rebellion. So if you clicked on this expecting just a beheading, you got a whole closed nation instead. A 16-year-old boy, an army bigger than most countries could raise, and a door that stayed shut for 2 centuries. If this is the kind of history you didn't learn in school, that's exactly why this channel exists. Subscribe. A new animated history documentary drops every Saturday, and trust us, they don't get less wild than this. Because Amakusa Shiro wasn't the last person history called a messiah, and definitely not the last to die for it. Next time, we're heading somewhere just as unlucky, a rebellion nobody saw coming either. Every empire thinks it's closed every door. Every single time, something slips through anyway. Sometimes it's a hidden shrine. Sometimes it's a whispered prayer. Sometimes it's just a story that refuses to stay buried. 37,000 people couldn't stop an empire, but somehow their story still did. So stick around, because the next unlucky story is already waiting.